Hey guys, are you a fan of Megaman? Well, check out my book, Fight Megaman for Everlasting Peace of Volume 1, which actually covers Megaman 1 through 11 and Megaman and Base. It has reviews, retrospectives, robot master lists, and a lot more. And if you purchase the physical version from Amazon, you get the Kindle version completely for free. It's one hell of a bargain, so don't miss out and click on the link below to buy your book. Take care, Mega friends.
Hey guys, Ryan here, and welcome aboard the Popcorn Rocket, where I'm broadcasting in space for awesome video game memories, and you can tell I'm a bit scared because we're going to be talking about one of the most iconic NES franchises of all time, and also one of the scariest ones too, the Castlevania series!
So the original Castlevania series, which started on the NES, is the story of the Belmont family versus the evil forces of Dracula.
And oh man guys, do I got a whole bunch of games to show you here on Awesome Video Game Memories about Castlevania. I think I should put the hood back on because even in space, it's even scarier because no one can hear you scream, so enjoy! Ah!
Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're talking about today is Castlevania. So I admit, when I was a little kid when this game was out, I was afraid of everything horror related. I mean, the box art for this game looked scary. Playing through this game was scary. I mean, the whole castle was very, very scary looking. I mean, the giant bat in the first level was very scary. And when I heard that fabled vampire killer thing, oh man, it scared the crap out of me. But a couple of years later, I completely desensitized to it. I was looking at every horror movie I could see on TV. I went into the horror section at the video store, and I was able to play this game after I finished the second one, actually. So what everyone remembers about Castlevania is this game is hard. Hard with a capital H. Although not exactly Ninja Gaiden hard. So once I was finally brave enough to play this game, I remember blazing through the first level pretty easily. The second level wasn't super hard, but there was those freaking Medusa heads, which had come to curse every Castlevania player in every future Castlevania game. And then there was, those spikes that came down, which would kill you in an instant, which are kind of hard to avoid. Although Medusa wasn't that difficult. I remember breezing through the third level, except when you fought the mummies. I mean, the mummies were kind of hard, but not that hard. And then after that, you fall in the tunnel. You have to fight the Frankenstein monster and the Flea Man, which I think people used to call Igor. And that's when the difficulty of the game starts ramping up. So, and now everyone remembers this one. The hardest boss in this game, in any Castlevania game, in almost any game in history, was the Grim Reaper. Like, I could not beat the Grim Reaper normally. Like, I could not beat him just walking into the chamber and whipping him. I actually discovered this trick where I had to have the holy water, I had to have the double or the triple shot, and I had to stand on this ledge and fire the holy water exactly when the Grim Reaper appeared, and if I messed up once, I was dead. That was the only way I was able to beat the Grim Reaper. So I remember the final battle with Dracula wasn't exactly as hard as the Grim Reaper, but the problem was Dracula took a lot of life off, so you were only able to get hit 4 times the entire battle. 4 times! I remember the first form being easy to beat, but then when he turns into the second form and he jumps around the place, it was a bit hard to avoid at first, but once you finally got the pattern down, you were able to beat him, and then you got that ending, which I thought the ending was okay. But the whole reward for this game is just beating this game. I mean, Castlevania was a difficult game to beat, and it earned you a badge of honor if you were able to beat this game. It was a cool thing to brag to your friends, hey, I was able to beat Castlevania 1. If there was some kind of video game military and you had those stripes of honor and stuff, Ninja Gaiden 1 and Castlevania 1 would be on those. And those are two stripes that I would have. And also, the Castlevania series was highly regarded for its music. I mean, Vampire Killer was an awesome theme once I finally desensitized and wasn't afraid of it anymore. And I loved Wicked Child, which is the theme of the third level. We even did like a Battle Geek Plus dance parody on it. Yeah, and there's also that song that played on the Grim Reaper's level. I forgot what the name of it was. I'll probably put it here. It had this really cool part where it really sounded like it made you feel determined to beat the level. So the first Castlevania was definitely a fantastic game to start the series. Even though it was very flawed and there was definitely a lot of improvements made in the sequel, and you can get this game on the Virtual Console on the Wii U or the 3DS, which I would highly recommend because you get save states, which make this game a lot easier.
Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're talking about today is Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. So I mentioned in the Castlevania Awesome Video Game Memories that I was afraid of everything horror back in the day. Like, I remember even the iconic Vampire Killer theme scared the shit out of me. So let's fast forward to the summer of 1992. My cousin brings over Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. I'm like, oh, it's a Castlevania game! Give it away! Give it away! But my cousin's all, dude, don't be a pussy. Let's just play Castlevania 2. It's an awesome game. Like, you're totally missing out. Like, why the hell did you pussy out on the first Castlevania, you pussy? Yeah, my cousin was right to call me a pussy there. And everybody remembers the first Angry Video Game Nerd episode, well, back when he was called the Angry Nintendo Nerd. It was Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest.
This game sucks.
And I remember watching it and I was like, I don't really agree with all this guy's points, but this was a pretty funny video. I wonder if he's ever gonna grow big. Yeah. Good job, James. And of course, I wasn't oblivious to Castlevania 2's existence. I mean, I read it in magazines. I read, these villagers give you really terrible hints. I read that the game was, non-linear. Kind of the precursor to Metroidvania. Basically, Castlevania 2 was the Zelda 2 of the Castlevania series. And also, the thing that really hooked me on this game when me and my cousin played it was the music. Like, everyone remembers how awesome the music is in this game. Like, bloody tears, man. Castlevania has some of the most iconic music in video games, ever. Like in Castlevania 1, you had Vampire Killer. But in Castlevania 2, you have Bloody Tears. And Bloody Tears is a theme that sounds so epically tragic. Like, it's epic in a way, but it's tragic. It's tragic because Simon has a curse he has to deal with, and he has to beat Dracula. Just listen to it, man. And then let's not forget, what a horrible night to have a kiss! And also, let's not forget the music in the mansions, which actually does sound a lot different than most of the tunes in this game, but it surprisingly fits. And also the awesome music that plays when you're in the ruins of Castlevania. I admit, if I played this back in the day, all by myself as a kid, I would have been freaked out. I probably would have been freaked out at the night music anyways. And the super awesome theme when you're battling Dracula. It sounds like something out of Ghostbusters. And now let's talk about the gameplay. Now, I do admit I did have the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide when playing this with my cousin. And as you know, Castlevania 2 is a very, very non-linear game. It's not like you go through levels 1 through 8. It's just like one big trek through Transylvania. Of course, the first item I bought was the holy water, because the holy water kind of acts as your secondary weapon for most of the game. And I remember just throwing holy water everywhere just to discover like secret passageways and shit. And holy water was definitely useful for finding all those false floors which really plagued the mansions. And just like Zelda 2, the clues given to you by the villagers aren't very helpful. Like for the limitations of the NES, like they're definitely very vague. I remember, kneel at this rock. Okay, kneel at this rock? Well, I didn't know I had to have like a jewel with me. And also I remember one of the hints was, hit your head on this rock to unveil something. I'm like, what? Yeah, even as a kid I couldn't decipher any of this shit. Thank God for the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. And now let's talk about the mansions. Besides the really awesomely hilarious music, which actually has its own creepiness in a way, like the mansions serve as the dungeons in this game, and you have to buy an oak stake in order to strike the crystal and get Dracula's body parts. And I remember when I first bought the oak stake, I thought it was a weapon. Like, I didn't look at the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide for this. I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this oak stake. Whoa, this is like a cool flashing knife! I gotta raise all those hearts again, don't I? And actually, I remember looking at the back of the box, like when you go into one of the chambers with Dracula's body parts, there's all these skeletons hanging around. And I thought those skeletons were gonna drop down and attack you. Well, there's plenty enough skeletons attacking you, we don't need more. And each of Dracula's body parts helps you in a way. I like having Dracula's rib, and then you can use Dracula's eye to see hidden passageways. So let's talk about the bosses, or the lack thereof. There's only 3 bosses in this game. There's the Grim Reaper, there's the Mask, and then there's Dracula. And none of these bosses are really hard. Like, the Grim Reaper is super easy in this game. I mean, you can even just run past him. And then also the Mask. I think it's Camille's mask. Yeah, you can just run past that too. And even if you try to fight them, they're not very difficult to beat. And I also remember me and my cousin getting into an argument on whether we should buy the chain whip or wait for the Morning Star. I was like, no, let's buy the chain whip because the chain whip is going to be cool because you're like swinging a chain. He was like, no, my friend told me to get the Morning Star, and he was right, the Morning Star was a lot better. And the final battle with Dracula, or his decaying corpse, or whatever the hell he is, he looks like Skeletor in a blanket.
Yes, I'm in Belmont. I'm Skeletor, Dracula's cousin. No, I'm actually Dracula. Fuck it.
And let's not forget, this one town you enter before you fight Dracula, this old woman is like, let's live here together. And I'm like, ugh. Reminds me of a trip to Transylvania I had once. Ugh. And so the final battle with Dracula. There's almost no way you can lose this. Like, by the time you get here, you'll probably have like all the items, the Morning Star. Yeah, what I used to do is I would just throw the dagger at him, but then my cousin showed me a faster way. You know, like there's these things called laurels that when you fire them on the ground and then they shoot up a flame, like you can just throw laurels at the center of the room and Dracula will always get hit. And you'll beat him like in 20 seconds or something. I'm like, okay, that's fast. And then once you beat the game, there are multiple endings depending on how much time you spent. I remember the first ending I got was the normal ending, and then I remember playing it again by myself, and I ended up getting the bad ending where Simon dies of his wounds. And then I played it again pretty recently, and I got the good ending because I figured out you can actually grind hearts in the mansions, and it won't count against your night and day time. Isn't that great? And this time, unlike the first Castlevania, you have passwords this time, although the passwords get a little long, and I like the music. I do remember that I didn't have spare pieces of paper to write passwords on, so I wrote all the passwords in various guidebooks, like on blank pages. Yeah, I was stupid, I shouldn't have done that. I probably should have asked my parents for some paper. Yeah. So overall, was Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest really the black sheep of the series like the angry video game nerd described it? Well, I know James Rolfe was joking around and he does like the game, and there are things about this game, yes, that I don't like, especially, the lack of clues, kind of the non-linearity of it, like you don't really know where to go if you didn't have a strategy guide. And a lot of the jumps in this game are just like, and all the false floors, but thank God you got the holy water. But I think my biggest gripe with the game is once you get the hang of it, it's way too easy. Like, an easy Castlevania game is great. Don't get me wrong, because Castlevania is known for being balls to the wall hard. But Castlevania 2, it just lacked a lot of stuff. Like, it could have used a lot more bosses. Like, each mansion should have had a boss. Like, instead we get really easy Grim Reaper, the really easy Grey Mask, and that's it. Like, we could have had, like, Frankenstein in this mansion, or the Wolfman in this other mansion. Like, the possibilities were endless. But regardless, I still say Castlevania 2 is a really solid game, especially for the music. Yeah, so you can get Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest on the NES Classic Edition, granted you can find one, or you can just get it on the various virtual consoles till the end of time. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. Now, I distinctly remember in my I'm scared of everything horror phase, I saw this at my mom and pop video rental, and I remember the box saying, like, you can win a free trip to Dracula's hometown. I'm like, Transylvania's real? Is Dracula's castle real? Of course it is, but now it's modern day Romania, and there are actually Dracula's castle tours. Gee, I wonder who won that prize. But of course, after I played Castlevania 2, I went out and rented this game because I was like, I'm brave now, I can play horror games, and I'm happy. Now, Castlevania 3 is actually a prequel to Castlevania 1, where you actually play as Trevor Belmont, although he's called Ralph in Japan. And where I felt that Castlevania 2 lacked challenge, Castlevania 3 brings it back. Like, this is the hardest one out of the NES trilogy. Now, instead of going Zelda 2 Adventure of Link Metroidvania on us like in Castlevania 2, Castlevania 3 goes back to the linear level structure, although you can choose alternate paths. And I remember how awesome it was seeing Trevor Belmont kneeling at that cross, and then he swings his cape back, and then the awesome music beginning plays! Now, where Vampire Killer sounded awesome but spooky in a way, where Bloody Tears sounded epically tragic, Beginning is just epic, like hardcore Trevor Belmont epic, where he's whipping the hordes of Dracula's minions to this badass song. But Trevor Belmont isn't alone in this game, and you actually get 3 helpers. You get Grant Dynasty, Sifa Belnades, and Alucard, which is actually Dracula backwards. I bet you didn't know that. Oh, okay. Actually, I do remember when I read the booklet, I wanted to play as Sifa Belnades most because having a wizard was really cool. Although the problem was Sifa was the hardest one to control, and her magic wasn't very strong. And actually, Grant is actually really fun to play as because he gets to climb the walls, and Alucard turns into a bat, although he consumes hearts. Yeah, so what's cool about this game is you actually get to choose different paths. Like, I remember, I decided I'm gonna choose the Ship of Fools. Fools! But no matter what path you choose, you'll always end up at Dracula's castle at the end. And actually what's cool about this is you get to see, pre-Dracula's castle. It's exactly the same structure as the original Castlevania, but it's not as messed up. I mean, this is a couple hundred years before the actual Castlevania, and it shares the same structure. I mean, it's really cool. It's like going back to the past. And they play some familiar tunes. Alright, but now I do have a confession to make. I was only able to beat this game with Alucard, because you can turn into a bat and fly, because getting to Dracula is so much harder than actually trying to beat him. The last couple of levels of this game are super freaking hard. Holy shit, I could not get past this with Sifa in any way. I couldn't get past it with Grant. I just had to rely on Alucard and his awesome bat flying ability. And then the final battle with Dracula, like his first form isn't that hard, but then he turns into like this super monstrous second form with platforms, kind of unlike the first game where he was a bit downgraded, but still, I mean, like giant bird statue griffin Dracula was pretty tough to beat. And I do admit, I only saw Sifa and Grant's endings on YouTube. I've always just seen Alucard's. But the game does provide a lot of replay value because there's so many paths you can take, and there's like 3 different endings. But be warned, Castlevania 3 is definitely the toughest game in the NES trilogy. Like, this game makes the Grim Reaper of the first game look like a baby. But I do believe Castlevania 3 for the NES is definitely the best of the NES trilogy and gives you the best Castlevania experience. Because of the multiple paths, you get to travel through different types of levels, like my favorite one being the Ship of Fools. And then there's the Mad Forest. And then seeing old school Dracula's castle before Castlevania was actually really cool too. And I do remember for a long time that this game was very hard to emulate, and sadly this game doesn't work on a lot of flashcards, so you kinda have to buy the real thing, buddy. Well, sadly, you can't play Castlevania 3 on the NES Classic Edition, but you can get it on the various virtual consoles. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Super Castlevania 4! Now, this is my personal favorite of the Castlevania games, even more than Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night. Okay, just hear me out. Because I feel like this game is the one I have the most nostalgia for. I remember back in the day, like in 1993 or 2, my cousin's friend had this game, and I remember like the transition from the NES to the SNES, and Castlevania 4 was one of the games that really made a huge jump from the NES to the SNES. I definitely remember watching that intro, with the gravestone and then the lightning strikes it, then Dracula's spirit comes out as a bat. Like, I remember like my cousin's friend was like, "Dude, you should watch this at night." Oh my god. And also what was really cool about my cousin's friend's place was like, in his playroom, he had like a 50-inch CRT television. I am not joking, and we got to play Castlevania 4 on that with big booming speakers. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Although instead of being a direct sequel to Castlevania 3, although it kind of is, Castlevania 4 is a bit of a retelling of Castlevania 1 with more added stuff. You're still playing as Simon Belmont, although he's dressed a bit differently, kind of more like a Greek warrior now rather than a European warrior. And you have to traverse through caves, farms, underwater tunnels, ancient civilizations, even before you get to Dracula's castle. Now, Castlevania games are known for their awesome theme songs, and I remember the theme of Simon that plays at the beginning of the game, it has this really awesome build-up. Like the piano build-up, and then the theme of Simon is just so epically motivational, it puts you in the mood just to whip Dracula's minions back to hell. And the good thing about this game, the controls are a little less stiff than the NES versions, although the game is still a bit stiff in a way, but you get to whip in 8 directions. And also, if you hold down the Y button, Simon holds up his whip like a shield, which really saves you in a lot of situations. And what's actually cool, Simon can use his whip to grapple on places. Now let's talk about the stages, the bosses, and the enemies. Now, if I were to play this game under 10 years old, I could not play this game. This game is so awesomely horrifying looking. I'm so glad I waited till I was a teenager, desensitized to all the horror stuff to play this game. Because this game would have probably freaked me out as a kid. Holy shit, man, the enemies in this game are huge and freaky looking. I mean, I need not say anything more, just look. Especially those mudmen, you just keep hitting them and more of them just start coming. And oh man, the bosses. Let's talk about the bosses. Oh boy, the bosses. Man, I remember that skeleton jouster at the end of the first level. I remember the big fat Medusa rather than the Medusa's heads. And then those freaking dragons down in the ruins. And that really awesome level with the mode 7 where you're like rotating and it's like, whoa. And then the boss where you like hit him, like he's a whole bunch of rocks and then he gets smaller and then he splits into more. Like, holy crap. And then when you go into Dracula's castle, holy shit, Dracula's castle is like the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, but even scarier. It's like, this place looks really fucking terrifying. And like the boss here is like Paula Abdul and Fred Astaire. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Even as a kid, I understood that. And what's even crazy is like you go to Dracula's treasury. Like Dracula's a rich motherfucker. I mean, look at this shit, man. And you fight like a golden bat made of money. I can sell this bat on the black market. And also what's cool, like before you get to the end of the game, they actually play remixed versions of the 3 main Castlevania themes: Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, and Beginning. Although I do admit that one level with the stairways is really hard. And then you fight Dracula's close associates. First you start off with the dinosaur boss. I think his name is Slagra, who's not too hard. And then there's Gaibon, the gargoyle. After you do a whole bunch of damage to him, he turns red. He's a bit harder, but then he kind of dies pretty morbidly for a kid's game. Oh boy. And then you fight our buddy, the Grim Reaper, who's definitely a lot more difficult than he's ever been, but not as hard as Castlevania 1. But he's still really hard. And then it's so awesome when you walk towards Dracula's chamber, all the lights turn on, and then you make a leap of faith and find a whole bunch of bonus items. Yeah, I do admit, I actually knew about this bonus chamber way before I even played this game because it was like just advertised in every magazine. And then the fight with Dracula begins with all the lightning just crashing around. And he's actually not too hard. He's actually quite easy in this game. And also, the good thing about this game too is like Dracula doesn't turn into some kind of crazy form at the end of the game. Like he still turns into a second form, but he just has a skull as a face. Like he's not that much harder than he is. And then when you beat Dracula, he tries to escape into the sunlight, but then he burns like the bat that he is. Oh man. So Super Castlevania 4. I cannot describe how epic this game is in just one video. I mean, this is a game you have to play for yourself. I mean, it's one of those games that really made the jump from the NES to the SNES. And everything was improved. The gameplay was improved. The graphics were improved. The music was improved. I mean, the music was already great in the NES games, but it's even better here. Like, it's amazing. Although Castlevania 4 is a bit easier than its predecessors, it's definitely not a walk in the park. There are still a lot of hard parts about this game, but thankfully you have passwords, so it's definitely not like a big trek that you have to play from beginning to end, like the first Castlevania. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend playing this game. And you can get this game on the Virtual Console for the 3DS or the Wii U. I definitely recommend getting it for the 3DS because you can play this on the go. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Castlevania Rondo of Blood, or Akumajo Dracula, Chino Rondo. Now, a lot of people call this the holy grail of the Castlevania series. Like, I remember seeing this in Electronic Gaming Monthly, like back in 1993, and I was like, oh wow, there's a Japanimation, yeah, I said that word, a Japanimation type Castlevania game. That's cool. Sadly, we never got it, but we got an SNES port, which I will talk about a bit later. So during my retro gaming collecting phase back in 2003, I spent $160 buying this from eBay. I'm not joking. Sadly, I don't have it anymore because I needed to sell it, but I actually made the same amount of money I spent on it when I had to sell it. But sadly, I could not afford a PC Engine CD on my measly minimum wage salary, so I had to play this game on the Magic Engine emulator. And kind of the funny thing is, I played Symphony of the Night years before I played this game, so I was confused like during the first battle of that game, which was Richter versus Dracula, but now I have a better understanding of it now. So did this game blow me away like everybody else was saying? Was this truly the holy grail of the Castlevania series? Did I put my $160 to good use? I'm gonna say mostly yes, but this is not my favorite Castlevania game. So the big problem I have with this game is, even though they improved the controls in Castlevania 4, we're kind of back to the stiff controls of the NES Castlevania games. I mean, Richter controls like a tank. So sadly, you can't whip in 8 directions, and you can't hold out the whip as a shield like in Castlevania 4 or Symphony of the Night if you're playing as Richter. So you kind of have to scale yourself down back to the old school Castlevania way of playing. So now let's talk about the actual game. Now what's really cool about this game is it actually has an intro in German, like not in Japanese or any other language, it's German.
Kann sich in eine Fledermaus.
Fledermaus, yeah, isn't that a character from The Tick? So there's a poor woman who's gonna be a sacrifice to Dracula. Don't do it! Don't do it! Oh my god, so bloody! So did the woman disappear or did she become Dracula? I don't know, but she was a sacrifice. So in this game we take control of Richter Belmont, who's one of the great-great-great-grandsons of Simon Belmont. And this time his girlfriend Annette was kidnapped by Dracula and you have to go out and rescue her. And what's really cool about this game, it has anime-inspired cutscenes. Nope, not Japanimation. I'm not using that word, you crazy otakus, you. Although the motion of them is limited, they're still really cool looking. And I really love the main theme of this game, Bloodlines. And what's really cool about this game is you get to go to one of the old towns from Castlevania 2. I remember seeing this in EGM like in '93 and I was like, oh cool, this is like a sequel to Castlevania 2. Kind of. It does take place in the same timeline though. And man, if you thought the enemies in Super Castlevania looked great, like, dude, look at these enemies. Like, you have skeletons just hopping out of the windows. You have this gigantic ass behemoth, like, chasing you. Like, you have these really, really huge armor things attacking you in the town. And then you have to fight this dragon at the end of level 1. And actually what's cool about this game, kind of like Castlevania 3, it has separate paths, although you have to find some kind of key or some kind of item to access some kind of secret passageway. And also you get another playable character, Maria, who is Annette's younger sister, and she actually controls really, really good, and she's fun to play as. And in all honesty, it's a lot easier to beat the game with Maria than Richter. Although even with the stiff controls, this game is a lot easier than the NES games, it's a lot easier than Super Castlevania 4, and it's definitely a lot easier than most of its counterparts. Especially if you're playing as Maria, because Maria has a double jump, she has the doves she can fire off. Although what's great about this game, like the bosses of this game look incredible. I mean, the werewolf looks really cool, I mean, fighting Shaft is really cool. Yeah, like look at all these crazy ass bosses you get to fight. And what's really cool about this game, with the different paths and the different secrets, you get to rescue people from the town, you also get to rescue Annette besides Maria. Although I do admit the final battle with Dracula is really, really easy in this game. So is Castlevania Rondo of Blood worth spending about $160 on? I definitely have to say yes and no, because I do feel it's a bit overrated. Okay, I'm sorry about that, I just felt that Castlevania 4 was the better game, and the sequel to this game, Symphony of the Night, was definitely a lot better. And I do think the major problem I have with this game is the controls. I mean, Maria controls like a charm, but Richter still controls like a Castlevania Belmont tank. And it's just more enjoyable to play as Maria, because playing as a little girl in this spooky environment just adds a lot of hilarity to the game that the Castlevania series like never really had before. And also on the PSP there was a port called Dracula X Chronicles where you get to play a remastered version of this game, and you can unlock an English translated version of this game on the PSP, although it has a bit of slowdown and the voices are off sync during the cutscenes, which I will cover in a separate video. So you can spend the 160 bucks on eBay to get the legitimate CD of this game and spend another $250 on the PC Engine. Or I just recommend getting it on the Virtual Console for the Wii or getting it on the Dracula X Chronicles on the PSP, although it has a bit of slowdown. Yeah, so that wraps up this episode of Awesome Video Game Memories on Castlevania Rondo of Blood, or Akumandra Dracula Chi no Rondo. Welcome to Awesome Video Game Memories, where we talk about awesome memories about video games, because trust me, this one is awesome. I'm Ryan, and the game we're going to talk about today is Castlevania Symphony of the Night! Now this game needs no introduction, none at all. You all know how awesome this game is. Although I do have to consider it my second favorite in the series next to Super Castlevania 4. Okay. So I'm sorry. And this was the game that inspired the entire Metroidvania concept. Although it was done before in Castlevania 2. So, oh man, what's not to say about this game? Well, let me get started. When I first played this in 1998, so my friend let me borrow the game on a Friday, and then on Sunday, I beat the game with the full 200.6%. That's how obsessed with the game I was. I mean, I could not put this game down. So I played this game before I played Rondo of Blood, and I was like, oh hey, who's this Belmont guy I'm controlling? It's Richter Belmont. I just had to look that up on the internet. And then, we all know, this is the most classic exchange between Belmonts and Dracula.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh. I was called here by humans who wish to pay me tribute.
I think this is Chris Redfield's voice actor from the original Resident Evil.
Your words are as empty as your soul. Mankind ill needs a savior such as you.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. How about you?
I need not say more. A true conversation between man and enemy. And of course, Dracula is like super easy to beat, and depending on how good you do during the fight, affects Alucard's stats later in the game. Now, if there's one thing that really stands out about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, is the music. Oh my god, is the music incredible! And oh boy, the music of this game is so incredible. Like, we have our classic awesome Castlevania themes, like the really upbeat ones, and then we have rock themes, we have horror themes, we have metal themes, we have spooky themes, we have beautiful, elegant themes. Like, the music of this game is just so rich in variety, and it fits every single part that it's in. Like, it's amazing. Also, what's really amazing about this game are the controls. Like, this is the game I finally felt like Castlevania now has perfect controls. Like, Alucard handles like a dream. Like, you can control him while he's jumping. Like, he's so easy to control. It's like, wow, like I'm just floating on air while playing this game. Now let's talk about the castle, the enemies, and the bosses. Like, holy shit, the enemies are like so detailed, so monstrous. Like, what's really cool about these enemies is like they have their own unique death animations, and you just want to see them all. Like, you want to see Alucard just kill the shit out of all the enemies just to see how they die. Although I do admit the castle is a bit repetitive in the way it presents the stages, but that's okay because the stages are just so detailed and so huge. Like, you want to get the full 200.6% of this game. Like, I remember just exploring every little corner, just trying to make the map. It's crazy. Although the big gripe I have with this game is it's way too easy. I mean, that shouldn't be a bad thing considering Castlevania games are as hard as a rock. But this game sadly loses a lot of its challenge. Like, even though the Grim Reaper strips you of all your items, but once you get stronger items, especially the Chrysogrim in the Inverted Castle, like, I remember I got the Chrysogrim on my first try in the Inverted Castle, and the game was just a cakewalk. Like, I was just like slicing through enemies like it was nothing. So I did replay the game again to not use the cursor, but the game was still too easy. It's kind of sad seeing all these crazy ass bosses. Like there's this boss called Beelzebub who looks like a rotting corpse, but he's like super easy to beat. And then in the inverted castle, like there's that gigantic dragon who's still really easy to beat. And then there's that one boss who's just a whole pile of dead bodies, but you can just slice it open very, very easily in this game. And oh yes, let's talk about the voice acting. Now, I think Alucard's voice is fine, but Richter sounds like Chris Redfield. Dracula sounds a bit over the top, but not as bad. Although I do like the librarian.
Thank you.
What can I do for you?
I'm interested in this.
like farewell for now.
And I think Shaft sounds okay, but not too over the top like a lot of the characters in this game. And like Maria, her accent sounds a bit over exaggerated.
Richter, give us your strength.
And actually what is pretty cool, like you can turn Alucard into Mist, you can turn him into a bat, or you can turn him into a wolf. And also you can have these extra allies called familiars. Like my favorite one was actually the sword familiar, but then you can also use like the devil familiar to like activate secret passageways. I mean, it's really cool. And also what is crazy about this game, like Richter is kind of the primary antagonist for the first half, although you get these special glasses and realize he's being controlled. And the first time I played this game, you know, I got the glasses, but then I played it again and wanted to play it with Richter as the bad guy. Then I had Richter killed and then the game ended there. So I kind of got the fake ending. But if you beat Richter with the glasses, then the inverted castle appears like a castle, like just like Dracula's, just appears out of thin air and is on top of the normal castle, and everything is upside down. I mean, that's pretty psychedelic, man. And of course in the inverted castle we get even crazier enemies, like crazier bosses. Like I remember like the Cthulhu's, like they're like and then you get to fight Dracula's pal Orlocks. Like, yeah, Dracula must be really close with Orlocks if he's gonna give him his own part of the castle to inhabit. But the inverted castle isn't really that bad at all. It's just everything is upside down, which is really fucking cool. And then you fight Shaft, and then you fight Dracula, and then that's it. And then Alucard is like, the only way for evil to triumph is if good men do nothing.
Indeed. But you must always remember that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
And of course, if you put in a code, you can play as Richter the entire game, although it's a little more old school, but you can still find a lot of stuff. Although sadly in the PlayStation version you can't play as Maria, but you can play as Maria in the Saturn version, which is Japanese only. Oh, and there is an extra area in the Saturn version. And of course in the Dracula X Chronicles on the PSP, there's an updated port of this game which you have to search for, and actually they redid the voice acting to make it sound good.
All I'm here for is you. To hell with your heresy! You're nothing but a blight on mankind.
Ha! Mankind! A cesspit of hatred and lies! Fight for them then, and die for their sins!
Although I honestly prefer the old school voice acting a lot more, because it's a timeless classic. And also in the PSP version you can play as Richter or Maria or as Alucard from the start, which is actually really cool. So oh boy, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I just can't say enough good things about this game. Even though it is my second favorite in the series, I do think it is the best Castlevania game for anybody to pick up and play. Like, you have hours of exploration, like so many enemies, so many bosses, so many like places in the castle to go, and there's so much replay value. Like, I remember just spending hours upon hours just trying to get those little parts of the map so I can get like 200.6%. And then you can play the castle as Richter or Maria in the PSP and Saturn versions. And even though I said this was a flaw of the game, yes, the game is definitely very, very easy to beat. It's not difficult at all, and even though, you know, the Grim Reaper takes away your items at the beginning, you can get better items. And I do recommend playing the old school PlayStation version for shits and giggles. Yeah, so Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You can get this game on the PSN store for really cheap. You can get it on the PSP for really cheap. And you can get it on the PSP for really cheap, either the digital version or the physical version. Because man, if I were to say everything I wanted to say about this game, I could probably take up like 3 hours, but I'm not going to take up your time. Hey everybody, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, especially subscribe, and make sure to click on that notification bell so you know when we release new videos, because YouTube's probably not going to tell you. And if you want to see me play games live, make sure to follow me at twitch.tv/BattleGeekPlus, and if you have a Twitch Prime account, make sure to subscribe so you can get awesome perks like subscriber badges and much more. And if you want to support us, make sure to support us on patreon.com/Ryan Molina, because every dollar helps me bring you a better show. And also make sure to follow me on Twitter at @RyanMolina and at BattleGeekPlus. And also make sure to check out the official Battle Geek Plus website for a complete listing of our books, merchandise, t-shirts, and a lot more. Alright, thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out these other videos right here. Thanks and take care.